It's one of the newest countries in our Earth's existence. It has snowballed into a behemoth at breakneck speed. It's no secret. In my homeland, we are master marketers, among other things. Some refer to this popular place as the home of the American dream, or the land of milk and honey, the land of the free, the home of the brave, where freedom rings from sea to shining sea. We'll learn the ins and outs of American history with Richard Vaughan on this week's episode of FYI. Welcome to For Your Info.
Inglés.
You got it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting edition of FYI. And folks, this is the last episode. Don't worry, not ever. It's the last episode of Season 5. So thank you to all of you for helping us get through another season. We're going to end the season the same way we started it. We started it with Richard Vaughan, and we're going to end it with him here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest, my friend, Richard Vaughan.
It's good to be here.
Great.
It's good to be here as usual. It's a lot of fun to be here with you. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I like chatting with you. You were on the radio show with us a little bit before, and I know from lunches we've had together, it's always nice to have a chat. But today, we're going to pick your brain a little bit because it's been a long time since I've been in history class.
If you're going to pick my brain is getting atrophy. It's getting older and older. You need to pick it before it atrophies completely.
Well, I'll tell you something. I get a lot of questions. Tú eres americano. ¿Qué pasó en el Vietnam? ¿O qué es la depresión? Yeah. And honestly, I don't know whether it's just I focused all my energy on English learning when I became a teacher, but I've forgotten so many things. So I figured here we are, American History 101. I figure we could call it that. And this way we teach you guys basics, the ins and outs, los pormenores. We're not going to get into too much detail, but we're going to brush over it a little bit because a lot's happened in
50 years.
250 years. So we're
Well, really, American history goes back to 1607.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start.
Or to 1492.
Let's go back to 1492. This way we go in order, because I know myself, I get lost. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
And in 1493, Columbus sailed the deep blue sea.
Ooh.
That was his second voyage of the four.
See, I remembered something there. I got that little rhyme, right?
But yeah, he crossed expecting to reach the East Indies, reach Asia. Mm-hmm. But he ran into an unknown continent for Europeans and for Asians. Mm-hmm. And that started the ball rolling. But strangely, 11 decades passed before Great Britain or England sent a person across to settle in the New World.
Oh, wow. So it took, I didn't realize the time that had passed.
Jamestown in 1607 was the first British or English colony in the New World.
Okay.
By that time, Spain was already controlling the New World from California to the Patagonia.
That was the height of the Spanish Empire.
Since 1492 up to 1607, we're talking of 115 years.
Wow.
Before the British. And the French didn't cross until 1534. And so, which means Spain had an incredible head start.
Yeah, really.
But Spain was so busy in Central and South America because of the Indian population density.
Sure.
Whereas the French in Canada, in the Mississippi River Valley, and the English along the eastern seaboard didn't encounter dense populations. They encountered settlements, Indian tribes, but not dense populations.
A settlement is like a poblado or something like this. Yeah.
But what's interesting is to understand the American personality, why we are the way we are, and we're very different from Europeans.
We're very gung-ho is the word I think of.
We share, together with Europeans, we share the Greco-Roman Judeo-Christian heritage.
Sure. Some of the religious elements.
Yeah, well, everything. I mean, the Christianity has marked Western civilization for the last 2,000 years. And, of course, the heritage of Greece and Rome.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, there are a lot of differences. And one of the differences is based on geography, simply.
Okay.
You know, we have a song, which you probably remember from when you were a kid. God bless America.
My home, sweet
land that I love, stand beside it and guide it. God bless America. Dios bendiga America. Okay, God bless America. It's an interesting song simply because I think it is true.
Mm-hmm.
God blessed America because the United States has advantages geographically that no other country in the world has.
Yeah.
The United States has 2 enormous oceans on either side.
The biggest, right?
That protect it from, Germany has shares a border with 8 countries.
Oh, wow.
Poland, France, Denmark, the Netherlands,
You
Belgium.
got to be on your toes. You never know.
Poland is separated by Russia and Germany.
Oh, yeah.
And
we all know they're not strategically.
Yeah. And China is, I think it's 13 countries they share borders with, starting with Vietnam and up to North Korea.
Wow.
You say.
And then the South China Sea, which is disputed. Yeah.
Whereas the United States has 2 enormous oceans that protect it. And to the north is Arctic, really, it's Canada.
Mm-hmm. Our buddies, too.
Yeah.
And
to the south, you have the North Mexican desert.
Sure.
You know, so really, the United States has no neighbors, doesn't have neighborly threats.
And natural buffer zones, so to speak.
Yeah. Second, the United States is located in the perfect climate zone.
Oh, right.
It has a semi-tropical area in the south, and it has a quite cold area in the north, but the most of the United States is within a temperate zone, perfect for agriculture, perfect for daily life, etc.
Sure. Fertile land.
You don't have the tropics where you feel lethargic, you say, which is natural. Lethargy is natural in the tropics.
Sure.
Third, it has 2 mountain ranges, one in the west and one in the east.
Wow. The Appalachian and the Rockies.
And the Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the middle is some of the most fertile land in the world.
The Great Plains, are we talking about?
We're talking about the prairie.
The prairie, gotcha.
You know, once you go over the Appalachians and you start into Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, you cross the Mississippi River, Iowa, Nebraska, you have the richest, together with Ukraine, it's considered the richest farmland in the world.
Oh, wow.
It's black soil.
Okay, so that's nutrient rich.
Well, you see, for 50 million years, snow has fallen up to 1 meter of snow every winter, and it melted into the ground in the spring. And the Indians didn't plow it. They were hunter-gatherers.
Right.
Hunting bison.
They were busy looking for bison, gotcha.
And buffalo, And so nobody touched the earth.
Wow.
And when Europeans reached that area and tried to plow it, they had problems because the sticky black soil stuck to the plow.
Oh.
That's where John Deere became famous. He developed a steel plow that could plow.
Cut through that.
And that's how John Deere became famous.
John Deere. One of your first clients, if I'm not mistaken? Very first.
As Vaughan Systems.
A shout out to John Deere.
Yeah. And so they have this agricultural land, but at the same time, they have natural navigable rivers. The Missouri River, the Ohio, the Mississippi,
obviously,
the Arkansas River, the Red River. And these are navigable rivers.
The Hudson even.
The Hudson is navigable way up.
Right up to Canada, you can bring goods,
Yeah. And you see in Europe, except for the Danube and the Rhine, you don't really have navigable rivers.
True.
Here in Spain, you don't have, except from Seville to the coast on the Guadalquivir, you don't have navigable rivers. So everything was perfect to have a strong country.
The stage was set, basically.
Protection, the right climate, protection by oceans, river system for transportation of goods and very rich agricultural land. And then you had people coming in from Europe, usually who wanted to escape from Europe and start a new life.
Gotcha.
So there was and the first children born in the United States were not interested in Europe.
Sure. That was the clean slate. Borrón y cuenta nueva.
Tabula rasa.
Yep.
You know, and that was it. So it's, for me, 50% or more of what the way we are as Americans is based on our geography, which influenced our history.
Sure.
Move west. You know, Pet Shop Boys say, "Go west, la da 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 da."
And we've heard that since we were a kid. Oh, you got to go west. That's where the opportunity is. Even in cartoons, we've seen it.
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny packing his bags and going out west.
Yeah, so there was always a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance. There was always, the idea is to find out what's on the other side of the mountain.
Right.
That's something that you don't find in Europe, that same. But in the States, always, what's on the...
And it was the Donner part, or was it... No, not the Donner.
Well, they were the ones
Lewis and Clark, right?
Lewis and Clark.
Finally got over that hurdle.
Well, Lewis and Clark, this was in 1804.
Okay.
Thomas Jefferson bought the American government bought from Napoleon Bonaparte the Louisiana Purchase.
Oh, yeah, what a deal.
And that is about 4 times the size of Spain.
And we paid pennies. I mean,
it was
adjusted
4 cents per acre.
Oh, my God.
4 centimos por acre.
We've gotten some good deals. We'll talk about Seward's folly later as well.
With Alaska.
Yeah.
All right.
We've gotten some really good deals to expand our territory.
And so when suddenly the United States doubled in size in one day.
Wow.
Just
imagine that, guys. Spaniards who are listening right now. Just imagine Spain being double the size tomorrow.
Napoleon needed the money for his adventures in Europe.
His troops,
everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so Thomas Jefferson, who was president at the time, decided to send an expedition all the way to the Pacific.
Okay.
It took them a year.
Wow.
And
now it takes 6 hours by flight.
They went to St. Louis and then went up the Missouri River, up into the Rockies, over the Rockies, and then finally the Columbia River.
As you say, easier said than done, that rocky part. That was rocky terrain. Never said better.
Yeah. And so, and then they came back, of course. But I think it took over a year and about 10 months.
To open up the West, really?
To get back. And that was the opening of the West. Mm-hmm. And but it wasn't until the 1846, 1847, in which the United States gained California.
Okay, because California was its own country? Like Texas? I know there were
Texas was its own country. California belonged to Mexico.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Well, originally Spain and then Mexico. Mm-hmm. And the Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1848. And Mexico, with bad luck. They lose California. Mm-hmm. 1 year later, gold is discovered in California.
Oh, that was 49, the 49ers, the famous rush.
And so, it enriched
America. They were
like,
what?
God bless America.
God bless America. The expression isn't God bless Mexico. Right.
But Texas gained its independence in 1836.
Okay.
About 12 years before this, because the president of Mexico was the famous General Santana.
Santana, sure.
Okay, Santana. He made a big mistake. The area of Mexico, which is today Texas, was very sparsely populated. Nobody lived there except priests and
like a border
monks.
Town of sorts,
No, but I mean, this is a big area, bigger than Spain.
Oh, wow. Okay, good.
Texas is bigger than Spain and Portugal together. Wow. Texas is bigger than the Iberian Peninsula.
Just to put everything into perspective there.
Yeah, and it was even bigger under Mexico, what was called the Texas Territory.
Yeah. I remember seeing it on a map. I do know what you're talking about.
And so Santana wanted this area of Texas to be more productive. Mm-hmm. But the Mexicans didn't want to go up there.
Right.
So he offered to people in the United States, but especially the western states of the early colonies, which was Kentucky and Tennessee.
Oh, wow. It only went that far. Wow. Those were the western states.
He offered special, you can have 100 acres for free.
Right.
As long as you cultivate
work the land. Sure.
And so that was the worst people. Those people in Kentucky and Tennessee were very independent-minded people because they were pioneers.
Sure.
Frontiersmen.
They had gone the furthest west than anyone.
And so they came down to Texas. Wow, 100 acres free. Mm-hmm. And they brought their wives, their children, and then they settled. But then the Mexican government was very bureaucratic and very no de entrada.
There were strings attached.
Yeah, there was a lot of conflict. And immediately there was a movement from independence. So it was a mistake on the part of the Mexican government to invite the wrong kind of people.
Right.
And so they won independence.
Rebels. Natural rebels.
They won independence in 1836, but they joined the Union, the United States, in 1845. So Texas was an independent republic for 9 years.
And you can tell, too, because Texans are a special breed. Is that true? Every state has a different kind of quirk.
It was a special breed. Mm-hmm. There's been so much migration from the north.
Gotcha.
People from Ohio, Michigan,
Right, but Texans, I always know that they stand alone. They have, and it's part of that. They had their own history inside of our history.
Yeah, the Lone Star State.
Absolutely. Everything's bigger in Texas, they say.
But it is.
Is it? Hey, that's what they say.
Have you ever seen a jackrabbit?
Yeah, okay, yes, yeah. The ones with the floppy ears. Yeah.
Well, they're not floppy. They're sticking up and they're big.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know which one. Yeah. Those are Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you have roadrunners out in the west and things.
I always think of that.
Many of my students here in Spain think that roadrunners exist.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It's true. All right, so now... Let's see. Let's go back a little bit here. So we had the forefathers. When did they come in? Because I remember in history we always talked about our forefathers, the ones who saw that, wait a second, this is some good, we can do something here. We can make our own country.
Well, it was basically because the British government made a lot of mistakes in dealing with the American colonists, because by 1760, 1770, 1780, Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and other cities were becoming important. Mm. And there were a lot of very intelligent, very capable people. But they had no representation in London in the Parliament. However, they had to pay taxes, and the British government was taxing them more and more on tobacco, on tea, on,
And it was a taxation without representation.
Taxation without representation. No vamos a pagar impuestos.
You can pay us, but we're not going to fix your roads.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
In today's...
And so that led to a certain degree of animosity that finally boiled to a point in which there was conflict with the British garrisons.
Okay.
Especially in Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts.
Oh, I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they rose up, and... that started it in 1775.
Okay.
Now, the Declaration of Independence is in 1776, July.
Well, this is something I wanted to ask you, too, and I don't know if it's the right moment, but I'm getting confused a little bit with Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and Constitution, because I know we have three major documents.
The Declaration of Independence was a two-page document, basically.
All right.
That was composed by Thomas Jefferson with corrections by Benjamin Franklin and John Adams. Mm-hmm. And it was finished on July 2nd.
Wow! So that was
it was an accident that we celebrate the 4th of July.
It took you longer to do the translation list one than the Declaration. Right.
Yeah, but it was approved in the Constitutional Congress in but in Philadelphia.
It was okay
on the 4th of July. And so that was the Declaration of Independence, and these men put their neck on the line because they would be hanged for sedition or subversive.
They'd be traitors against the crown.
George Washington and his little army with the help of French and Spanish.
Right. Lafayette, all these guys.
Yeah, but the Spanish helped in protecting the southern coast of the colonies.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. The Spaniards helped in the American
we owe you guys one.
War of Independence. And that war ended in 1781.
Okay.
The final battle with defeating Cornwallis. Mm. And then from 1781 to 1787, they had the Articles of Confederation, which was a very loose constitution in which the states had too much independence and power.
Okay, too much power,
It created conflicts. Mm-hmm. And so they decided to try again in 1787, and that's the Constitutional Congress. And that summer, they drew up the Constitution.
So it's incredible. You could say our first Constitution failed, in air quotes. It didn't...
the Articles of Confederation failed.
Yeah. I see, that's a fact a lot of people don't know or overlook.
But it was a 4 or 5 year question. They realized very
soon. They said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board, as we say. Volvemos a cero.
But it was difficult to get this Constitution passed. Mm-hmm. That's why the Federalist Papers, which you mentioned earlier, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay, another founding father, spent time traveling around the 13 colonies or 13 states, convincing people. And it was a close vote.
Like now people would do to vote Republican, vote Democrat, go from door to door, but they did it.
And then in 1791, 3 years later, when George Washington was active as a president, they realized they needed to add certain rights.
The unalienable rights, or is that
that was
before? Okay.
That's Jefferson.
So
the Declaration of Independence is, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights that include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
There you go. Life. Right. I remember that. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
It's interesting because he took that from John Locke.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
An English philosopher. Mm-hmm. But John Locke was life, liberty, and property.
Oh, which to this day is... Yeah. It's not a right, but it should be, maybe. Right.
And he changed property, strangely, Jefferson, to pursuit of happiness, and I think it was good. We have the right to
go after our dreams.
Try to be happy.
Yeah. to do whatever makes you happy and try and make a living doing that.
Because he wanted to separate the United States completely what was Europe.
Right.
Because Europe
its own entity,
nobility, aristocracy, class.
You had the classes, you had serfs before that. Like it was
clergy.
Too much baggage maybe in Europe.
Yes.
To start with their model, so they had to start fresh.
Yeah, they'd start fresh. There was not a single noble in the United States. Mm-hmm. Not a single.
Right.
Nobly.
No duke,
nobleza.
No
duke, no marquis, or no whatever.
Right.
You say. But in 1787, right after that, they realized they needed to add certain rights that were not included in the basic Constitution.
Like an addendum of sorts.
Yeah, an addendum, and we call it the Bill of Rights. Those were the first 10 amendments, enmiendas a la Constitución. Mm-hmm. It was right away. It was 1 year, 2 years later.
Right. They realized we got to get this in there.
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right to bear arms, freedom of whatever, of assembly.
Well, now we talk about that to this day. Your First Amendment, your Second Amendment rights. Sure.
Now, for an amendment to pass, after the Bill of Rights, then Amendment number 11, 12, 13, up to, I think we were up to 31 or something. I mean, that's not many. Because really, there are about 20 amendments.
Yeah, if you're not counting the 10 original.
In 220 years.
Sure.
There are only 20 amendments.
Right.
And one of them was repealed by another.
Oh, is that the prohibition?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
You see, you can't repeal, which means to eliminate, an amendment unless you pass another amendment.
Okay, sure.
And so there was an amendment passed in 1919 prohibiting the consumption, sale, distribution, and production of alcohol.
The mafia celebrated that one.
Wow. That made
Joe
the mafia.
Kennedy, all of them.
Yeah. And then in 1933, they had to pass a new amendment to nullify the previous one.
The dry law, as it was called.
Yeah. La ley
I didn't
seca.
know that. I didn't know how that worked. Yeah, because we were talking about before we started how the governments are very, very different. And you can't even consider here what is progressivo. It's a very different
it's totally different.
Scale or
spectrum. It's a presidentialist system. In Europe, almost all are parliamentary systems.
Okay, gotcha.
Where you have a prime minister. Mm-hmm. I mean, here, Pedro Sanchez is not the president of Spain.
Right.
He's a president, what they call presidente del gobierno.
Sure.
But really, what he is the primer ministro de España. Mm-hmm. Okay, he's the prime minister. But in the United States, there's a very clear, total separation between the executive and the legislative branch.
Right, I remember
Here, there
that.
isn't.
Right.
Because presido del gobierno, but he's member of the parliament as well.
Sure. Because the reason I remember, if I remember correctly, checks and balances.
Yeah.
So not one entity, one arm of the government could get too powerful.
Well, they've introduced that concept over the past 200 years in Europe of checks and balances, but it's not as effective as it has historically been in the United States.
Also, maybe because we started since the beginning. For them, it's like changing their whole modus operandi. And
I mean, even in the very first government of George Washington, they made the decision to create a new capital on, Washington, D.C.
Yeah, because it was Pennsylvania. New York was the capital for some.
It was New York or Philadelphia. And they decided to create a new city far from New York, Philadelphia, and Boston, because they wanted the political center of activity to be physically away from the industrial financial and commercial, because there could be collusion.
Sure. Lobbies
now with electronic, communication, it
now
doesn't
you're on
matter.
your private jet and you're in Maryland in 5 minutes.
Yeah. But at that time, you needed 3 days if you wanted to lobby Washington.
To affect the government in any way or influence them.
And so they created the Constitution. It has worked wonderfully over 250 years, or 230 years, the Constitution. But then there was a problem that finally required a civil war to solve 70 years later after the...
This was... Yeah, because it's good. I like that you're saying the date, because it's, I'm getting this timeline
see, George
in my
Washington
head.
became president in 1787 until 1796.
Okay.
Now, already there was a problem because the states in the north didn't allow for slavery, and the states in the south did. And this was a boil that was going to continue growing.
Gotcha.
With time. But the biggest problem between the south and the north was that the north was industrializing. There were more and more factories.
Less agriculture, more
whereas the south was almost totally agrarian. And the south exported at least maybe half of all of its produce to Europe.
Oh, okay.
And to Great Britain as well. Whereas the north was competing against Great Britain because Great Britain was the country that started the Industrial Revolution, and they were ahead. They had a head start.
Right. I know they were with jets, with a lot of technology. Yeah.
And the north of the United States wanted protection from British goods because Britain had an advantage.
Sure.
So they wanted to be protected from this.
They had infrastructure in place.
In order to grow and to mature. And so Washington, D.C., the central government put up high tariffs. Okay. Aranceles. High tariffs to protect their industry. But these high tariffs affected the agrarian South as well. Oh, okay. And so Europe said, well, if we can't sell our manufactured goods to America, we're not going to buy the agricultural goods.
Sure.
And so the South rightfully complained to Washington.
You can't take our business away here. Sure.
And so this lasted for 30 or 40 years.
Right. Gotcha.
On the floor of the House of Representatives.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it went on that long.
When you talk about the American Civil War, slavery is a critical question, but I don't think it's the number one. I would say it's number two. It's a derivative of.
Yeah, and some people even said that Abraham Lincoln was anti-slavery strategically. Like, okay, maybe if you asked him as a person, he's like, but it was more of a strategic decision for him.
Yeah. And finally, when it was clear that there was no solution, then his decision was to protect the Union.
Yeah.
To keep
everybody
Union
together, yeah.
Keep together, and that became the priority.
And that's enter the Civil War. We got General E. Lee and Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee and Ulysses Grant on the other side.
And Ulysses S. Grant. Well, let's do this, because we're going to take a quick pause right now, and we're going to come back with the bonus episode. And since it's the last episode of Season 5, and since we've got a special guest, Richard Vaughan, I've decided to make the bonus episode available for everybody. So stay tuned, and we'll check you guys out in the bonus episode of FYI. Oh, and how can I forget? I'd like to send a shout out to all my patrons, all the students who make this possible, and the students who are making progress with me every single week. A big shout out to all of you, especially my super duper students, Lina, Javier, Paco, Roberto, Jose Maria, Mila, Alex. And don't forget about my interstellar students, the ones who get a monthly private class with me, Carmen, Isa, Paco, David, and Edgar. A big shout out to all of you. Keep up the great work. And a quick reminder to those of you who haven't joined us yet, what are you waiting for? If you want bonus content, PDF documents with all the vocabulary, and classes with me, then join us over on patreon.com/Alberto Alonso. Okay, now we can say goodbye. Don't forget to join us in the free bonus episode this week. Thanks again, FYIers. You rock.